We can map the human identity as a tangible, engineered architecture, a physical structure built from a foundation of biology and childhood code. This architecture begins with the biological baseline, shown in this turquoise DNA helix. These genes establish the physical boundaries of your traits, from your height and eye color to your susceptibility to certain diseases. Directly on top of that genetic foundation sits the structural wiring of the brain. As illustrated here, these neural networks dictate your baseline personality, behaviors, and emotional responses. These networks are regulated by chemical washes of hormones. Fluctuations in testosterone and estrogen act as the physical dials for your energy levels, mood, and aggressive or emotional output. This biological hardware, your DNA, neural pathways, and endocrine system, defines your raw capacity. It is the structural chassis upon which your operating system will be installed. While biology provides the physical boundaries of who you can be, the actual code that will run your adult decisions, your fears, and your beliefs has not yet been written. That code is written during a critical programming window, the first 7 years of your life. This chart maps brainwaves from birth to age 7. Notice the dominant highlighted frequency, the 4 to 8 Hz alpha and theta range. Here, a child operates in waking hypnosis. With conscious firewalls offline, environmental input downloads directly to the subconscious. Without a critical filter, the system accepts all data as absolute truth. The child blindly downloads disciplinary tactics, a caregiver's fears, and specific verbal conditioning regarding their worth and ability. This imprinting extends to the larger societal matrix. As shown here, the child is simultaneously downloading the cultural and structural frameworks that define how they must act to belong. The child accepts this external data as reality because they lack the neurological capacity to analyze or reject it. This unverified external data hardwires directly into the neural network, forming a subconscious operating system that dictates the individual's relational models for decades. This early conditioning establishes your baseline self-esteem and confidence in how you relate to the world. In many ways, what we call adult identity is simply a foundation of unverified external code that was blindly accepted during childhood hypnosis. This conditioning forms the ego, a survival mechanism built entirely from childhood code. It runs behavioral programs designed to keep you safe, even when they no longer solve modern problems. In adulthood, a standard professional or social stressor can trigger an extreme physical reaction. This is the somatic alarm. A sudden rush of cortisol and adrenaline floods the system, manifesting as restless feet, a rubbing of the face, and a tightening in the solar plexus. This biological heat tricks the brain into perceiving a social confrontation as a literal life-or-death war zone. When the brain senses a threat, it triggers a GhostScript, an outdated set of behavioral directions installed in childhood. This script forces you into a primitive choice: attack the threat with aggression and volume, or withdraw and shrink your identity to avoid conflict. During moments of high stress, adults are rarely making calculated choices. They are simply executing a terrified child's survival reflex. If these reactions are so primitive, we have to ask why highly intelligent adults fail to recognize them in real time. The adult mind is too sophisticated and proud to admit it is operating out of sheer childlike terror. To protect the ego from this vulnerability, the system employs a defense mechanism called the liar shadow. The liar shadow is a rationalizing overlay. As this diagram shows, it spins an elaborate logical narrative to justify the primitive response underneath. If the script forces you to withdraw, the shadow reframes that reflex as calculated patience or stoic self-preservation. If you attack, the shadow reframes the aggression as necessary leadership or boundary setting. These intricate stories are designed solely to protect the ego and manipulate how the room perceives the individual. The original childhood conditioning is only half the problem. The real challenge is dismantling the complex intellectual layers that your adult mind adds to hide those primitive reflexes from view. You do not have to remain a helpless witness to this automated biological loop. Breaking the cycle requires a conscious override called cognitive restructuring. You must learn to recognize the somatic alarm the moment it begins. Notice the cortisol jump as a chemical signal, not a directive to act. Mentally isolate the ghost script. Locate the specific childhood voice dictating the fear and label it as outdated noise. Perform a reality check. As seen on the right, contrast the old fear with your present-day capabilities. You are no longer the child who needed that script. This intervention manually severs the connection between the biological feat and the childhood conditioning. By intercepting the physical alarm before it can trigger the script, you strip away the automated response and reclaim the ability to make a conscious choice. Shattering the liar shadow removes the noise of societal scripts and early childhood conditioning. Without those competing narratives, you are left with the sovereign king, the part of the self that listens to internal knowing rather than the boy code playing back your mother's voice. This is internal sovereignty, where decisions are made from a place of peace and clarity rather than a desperate need for external validation. Protecting this state requires a boundary known as a warm stone wall. This internal boundary must be completely unyielding and entirely calm. It requires no negotiation, no clever phrasing, and no defensive posturing. It is a state of quiet finality. Realizing that you do not fit into the default matrix of societal programming is not a weakness. It is your greatest competitive advantage. Step out of the shadows. Uninstall the code of who you were told you should be and become the architect of who you are. True belonging is not found by shrinking to fit the room, but by becoming the sovereign center of gravity within it.
The sovereign initiation begins. Claim your place. Join the sovereign initiation. Join the solo climb. Master your destiny.